by the storm was reported. Ron Sanders explains what happened.
25-year-old Robin Young of O'Galley Township in southern Dunn County was killed when her 70-foot mobile home flipped over. A refrigerator fell on top of her, killing her almost instantly. Young was holding her 1-year-old son at the moment the storm struck, but the boy was thrown from her to his father. Father, son, and Mrs. Young's sister all suffered only minor injuries. The storm cut a swath through the southern half of Dunn and Pierce counties, leaving hundreds of homes with damaged roofs or garages. More than 200 barns and sheds were flattened. A number of mobile homes were shattered.
What all did you lose?
Everything. I mean, the thing left.
Did you salvage anything out of it?
Nope. Well, just clothes. It's all have to be rewashed, you know.
Totally collapsed.
Yep. Just more like it blew up when we hit there. That's upside down right now.
The wind was just blowing like crazy. It blew the windows in the basement. It's just steady.
Did you hear the garage fall?
No, I didn't know that till I come up and looked and seen it gone. That's the only thing I didn't hear. It's just so much wind and, you know, the heavy rain all the time.
In Pierce County, in Elmwood, a 2-story building collapsed, trapping 12. Civil defense officials were able to rescue all of them. There was heavy damage to the elementary and high schools and to area trailer courts. The same story in Elk Mound in eastern Dunn County. Heavy losses in mobile homes and in garages and roofs. Ron Sanders, News Center 13, Dunn County.
On Saturday, 74-year-old August Hoffman died at St. Joseph's Hospital in Chippewa Falls. At first, officials thought his death was related to the storm. Hoffman had succumbed to heart failure after his mobile home was damaged in the tornado that hit the Stardust mobile home court. Now officials are not sure if it was related to the storm. They say Hoffman had a long history of heart trouble. Much of the storm damage was in the country, to barns, crops, and livestock. In a minute, a look at farm damage when our special report continues.
Need some construction help fast? Rainier Construction of Elmwood builds quality construction projects fast.
Successfully battled the weather, some for more than 100 years, lost this war. Farmers whose existence has always depended greatly on the weather donned flashlights and courage and stepped out of their basements early Wednesday, many of them finding their barns laying in ruins. And that was just the beginning. Their animals had no basement in which to seek shelter, and many lost their lives. Joe Osmond lost 2 barns, one of them collapsing on some livestock.
Well, we had 21 head in this barn here, and there's 8 of them dead. We got the rest of them out. There's 3 that are still crippled, and we don't know what the outcome of them will be.
At the very least, more than 10,000 farms were left without electrical power and no hope of getting it back for days. When power is lost, water pumps don't run, and milking equipment is silent. Both critical situations. It's impossible to milk a large herd by hand, and animals can't last more than 12 hours without water. The Department of Natural Resources pitched in, using fire control trucks to haul water to Dunn County farms.
The fire department in Menominee tells us they pumped over 100,000 gallons, and some of our trucks didn't get any water from there. They were getting water from the streams. So we may have gotten up to 150,000 gallons of water pumped to cattle in Dunn County.
That was just Wednesday. Water hauling was repeated throughout the week with a similar number of farms in need of water. Many farmers hooked up generators capable of handling their milking systems, one generator often being shared by a number of farms. National Guard and DNR generators were also brought in, 130 in all. Most of the power has been restored now, but the total extent of the storm's damage won't be known until harvest time this fall. Crops, especially corn, were bent to the ground by the unparalleled blast, and leaves were stripped by hail, rain, and wind. Much of the corn has sprung back to a near normal position again, but the crop it yields this fall is sure to be less than normal. Oats, nearly ripened, had its brittle stalks bent and broken, and again the yield is in question. But through it all, there was a sense of unity, brotherhood on the part of the farming community. Again, Joe Osmond.
I came over here and looked at this barn and knew there was 21 head of cattle in there, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I went up to the fire department and I asked them if I could have some help, and I don't know how many men were here, but it was just tremendous.
It will be years before the countryside looks normal again. It may never look the way it did before the storm. Gary West, News Center 13.
In the city of Eau Claire, the worst damage was at Mill Run, but throughout the city, the cleanup will take months. Jeff Welch reports.
The destruction in Menard's Mill Run subdivision is dramatic. Twisted lumber, furniture, personal belongings, and insulation carpet the ground. Former contents of more than a dozen homes ripped apart by high winds. Al Jordan was in Grantsburg the night of the storm. When he returned to Mill Run, he found his duplex in shambles. He says it was quite a shock. Other residents are calling it a nightmare. As the sting of the initial blow lessens, the ordeal of cleaning up begins. Jordan copes with his losses by keeping busy.
Helping my dad clean up his yard right now. That helps. But every time you come back here, you see this and you just, why? So, I don't know.
Jordan is staying with his parents. He says his neighbors have moved in with relatives or are lodging at motels. Sherry Fenner's family of 5 stays with relatives.
We're living across the street with my sister-in-law.
What's the mood around here generally from your neighbors? How are they reacting? What are they doing?
Well, everybody's really nice. They're all trying to help, and I don't know, they're just really nice.
Fenner wants to move her family into a camper next to her duplex while it's being repaired. She has no idea how long that will take. The storm tried to turn this young neighborhood of rented duplex living into waste. It may look as if the storm succeeded, but beyond the debris and the misery and the seeming futility of picking up the pieces lies a spirit. Neighbors who never knew each other now do, and are struggling together. Jeff Welch, News Center 13, Eau Claire.
While residents picked up the pieces of their battered homes, Northern States Power Company went to work fixing battered power lines. As soon as they could, NSP crews began inching through the city, repairing the miles of downed lines and clearing trees out of lines still intact. At first, the utility expected 90% of the city to be lit by Friday night, but trees tangled in the wire slowed crews and set back that prediction to sometime this week. The repairs that crews were able to make were temporary.
Trying to get as many customers back into service as possible, lump sum. Some distribution wires going to the houses and so forth are just taped up and cut down if they're torn off, and then will be installed at a later date.
NSP brought in help from several utilities in the state, as well as NSP crews from Minnesota. Linesmen, mechanics, company supervisors, and even janitors were pressed into service. Even with the added manpower, most linesmen found little time to rest. Most worked round the clock. While work moved slowly in the city, NSP's crews faced another monumental repair job in the countryside. The strong winds took down 10 miles of this 345 kilovolt power line stretching from Elk Mound to Menominee. Crews should be ready to set new poles in place this week, but it will take 2 months before the line is back to normal. The latest estimates show more than 85,000 NSP customers lost power in the storm. As of today, about 10% of Eau Claire is still without power. NSP's Lynn Moline says the outages are scattered in pockets around the city. But Chippewa Falls, the Menominee area, and rural areas east of Eau Claire are reported in good shape. The cost of repairs will be staggering. NSP's Moline says in the millions of dollars. That will include overtime and expenses for 300 utility crewmen, power poles, equipment, gasoline, and replacement power for the area. As the power blackout stretched from hours into days, the temperature climbed into the 80s, thus preserving foods became next to impossible. The result was a run on fast foods at the few restaurants that were open.
Well, yes.
By lunch hour on Thursday, there were long lines at drive-up windows and a wait of 25 minutes or more to receive an order. Those who tried to salvage the food stored in their freezers were given a helping hand from the Red Cross. 24 tons of dry ice were distributed to hundreds of residents, and the Red Cross also served hot meals. Spoiling food and the threat of food poisoning became a concern to area health officials, who put out a better safe than sorry warning.
If you have 3-day-old food in a refrigerator that hasn't had electricity, then get rid of it. If you have food in a freezer that is now soft, get rid of it. It is better to get rid of that than it is to come down with a possible case of food poisoning.
The warnings apparently worked. Neither Luther nor Sacred Heart Hospital had even one reported case of food poisoning. In just a minute, a look at how the damage added up in dollars and cents. We'll be right back.
From Bearings. It's their semi-annual store-wide sale featuring savings up to 20% on all in-store items and special orders. Names such as Hardin, Hickory, Henredon, and Baker. Carpet by Karastan, Lee, and Milliken.
Storm, and the figures are overwhelming. Total damage in the four-county area is estimated at $159,522,650. Damage was heaviest in Eau Claire County, where losses total nearly $61 million. $50 million of that occurred in the city of Eau Claire. In Dunn County, officials estimate losses at better than $38 million. GALLE Township and the city of Menominee were especially hard hit. In Pierce County, damage is estimated at nearly $30 million, mainly in Elmwood and rural areas. And in Chippewa County, damage is estimated at nearly $11 million. In addition to damage reports from the four counties, damage to public property, such as government buildings, streets, and utilities, totals more than $7 million. Timber losses, $15 million. More than $2 million lost in wages to workers. Grocery stores lost $650,000 worth of food. Private food losses were much higher, totaling more than $2 million.